Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I'm Lesley Kaplan, welcoming you here every single Monday, yes, even through the summer, your place and your podcast for inspiration, where we meet interesting people, business owners, nonprofits, or individuals making a difference in this wonderful and special country of ours. So how do we work? You stay on mute, and I welcome you whether you are watching this live and joining us live or whether you're viewing the replay. Don't forget, if you're watching the replay, please please write your comments. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love it if you subscribe as well. So who do we have today? We have a very special guest who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. And I was delighted to meet her. She has like a breath of fresh air just from her image, from the way she talks. I did not know her before. I hadn't met her in person. Before I do, I just wanted to say thank you also to our sponsors, to Eggert & Cohen Insurance, and to Lali's Flower Boutique in Jerusalem. So I'm going to now spotlight our guest instead of me. And good morning. Let's replace myself. See, breath of fresh air, just like I said. Good morning to Noa Kairy. And I just heard that her name was not always Noah. So she'll tell us a little bit about it in a moment. So who is Noa Kairy? She's been in Israel for around 30 years. She made Aliyah as a teenager with her family from Washington, D.C. And after many years of suffering from conditions such as anxiety, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, chemical sensitivities, and others, she found healing and transformation by what she called rewiring her brain and regulating her nervous system. And today, this is what she does. She helps her clients and people find freedom from anxiety in what she calls a neuroplastic approach. That sounds really interesting, Noa. Good morning. Welcome to our podcast. And we look forward to hearing your story.
Hi, good morning to everyone. And thank you so much, Lesley, for having me on this podcast. So I'm really excited, first of all, to tell you my story. And yes, just like, Lesley said, my name wasn't always Noah. And I'll get to that just a little bit later on. I'm originally from the US, from Maryland, which is near the Washington, D.C. area. And I moved here in my teens. I was about 17 years old, and it was a very difficult transition. I was, at the peak of my teenagehood, and it was quite a really difficult transition, identity crisis, and everything. And it was quite a life-changing event that happened to me at a very, very sensitive time. Now, I now, live in Israel. Of course, I have two children and a husband. I live in Ranana. But things weren't always as easy. Basically, I did, I did the school, I did army here in Israel. I went to university, and I can only describe it as accumulated stress from within, what basically led up to certain chronic conditions that I developed over the years. So, I can't even pinpoint, see what, usually it's some kind of like stressful factor. Some people are very much, they're very much educated in trauma, and some people of course don't really understand trauma, but trauma can really happen from little tiny events in life. And what happened with me is that there was so much little, accumulated stress on the way that contributed to certain kind of chronic conditions. So over the years, I developed a lot of certain what I call these days limbic system impairment conditions, such as chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS, fibromyalgia. There was a lot of I had a lot of other kind of anxiety conditions like PTSD, and quite a lot of like sensitivities to food, food allergies, multiple chemical sensitivities. And all of these conditions were really sort of kind of like a biological trauma imprint on the body. And it really came from some sort of like a pressure cooker of accumulated events and stress that just it led my brain and my body to feel very overwhelmed. So it was like very big, like, you know, intake for the body to take in all that kind of stress. So what happened was my body went into sort of into a survival state in which it was more of a state in which our every kind of like all my organs and all my whole body was directed towards surviving rather than thriving. And so it happened over, of course, like a decade, maybe even 2 decades of, of course, ups and downs where I felt better, I didn't feel better, I didn't realize that I wasn't feeling good. It was all sorts of ups and downs throughout the years. And what happened was it just got to a point where, I think it was during COVID, where even before COVID a little bit, where I started to feel all sorts of like chronic pain, and fibromyalgia started to develop after a very stressful move that I had from house to house. I moved from Tel Aviv to Ra'anana, and it accumulated into so much stress that my body crashed. And I felt a lot of other conditions come about. Like, that's when I developed fibromyalgia. My chronic fatigue became even worse. I felt like I couldn't get out of bed. The pain was so hard. It actually felt a lot like arthritis. And then later on, I realized it was fibromyalgia. And at that time, I was doing a lot of yoga, and I was doing a lot of body work, a lot of therapy, a lot of acupuncture, and nothing was really helping me. And although it was starting to, soothe my mind and soothe my body, I was connecting more. That survival state maintained. And later on, as I was studying and I was learning this, and I started to, really go into this, doing a lot of courses about the body, about the brain, and also about trauma, starting studying trauma. I started to realize that the nervous system, our nervous system, which is the autonomic nervous system, was really at the root of what I was feeling. So our nervous systems really help us feel safe or feeling like we're in danger, in threat mode. And in my case, I was in threat mode for quite a lot of years, and I didn't realize that my nervous system was stuck in that state. So, I started to study this, and I realized that regulating my nervous system became the go-to tool to helping me feel better. And I learned this also around the same time that I discovered an amazing program through someone. I discovered a program called brain retraining or brain rewiring, which is, it sounds extremely scary to some people. They say, what are you doing to my brain? What does this mean for my brain? What we're doing is that we're relearning safety. Okay, so the brain has certain kind of an ability. It's called neuroplasticity, which is the ability to fire and wire. So basically, we create certain neurons, like we have neurons in our brain that create certain associations. So if we have an experience and we have, let's say, a negative emotion, so that kind of neuron, these two neurons come together and create an experience. So what we're doing by rewiring our brains is that we're actually creating safety with a certain kind of like event or certain kind of like symptom or something like that. So our body feels safer. Our brain sends happy messages, safe messages to our body, which creates resilience in our nervous system, which creates resilience emotionally, physically. And that's really what brain rewiring is all about. And it really came to change my life. And I felt like, all sorts of shifts, emotional shifts start to happen, physical shifts started to happen in a very embodied way, in a very internal way. And it helped me connect a little bit more with my body. So those are the major points. I know that I talked a lot about, this a certain topic that many people may not understand, but I'm open to answering any questions.
Right, it sounds fascinating. Carry on. I think we're all just listening so eagerly. So tell us
Yeah.
how you then decided to go from having all these experiences. Yes, you learned this whole technique, and then what made you decide to actually take this on as a profession and to start helping other people? I think you said it was also just before COVID or just after COVID, right?
Yes, it was during COVID, actually, a little bit before, where I started this healing journey. And I started to realize that people, COVID it hit people quite hard, not only just physically, but also emotionally. I started to see people sink into sort of emotional states of like depression, or, physically also. This chronic fatigue syndrome was one of the major factors, like sort of lingering physical conditions that came from COVID, and it really hit us deep within the cells. So it's it really sparked some kind of motivation within me to help other people that were like me. So I did also suffer from long COVID for a while. I realized that learning this, that all of these conditions sort of fell under a certain kind of umbrella of conditions that were related to stress, that were related to the nervous system, and how dysregulated that we can be, even even if we aren't experiencing these conditions physically. The country that we're living in, and the stress from war, the stress from just living in where we're living, even globally where we are at the moment, can cause so much stress emotionally and physically. That kind of stress, like that kind of anxiety, it's still considered to be under that kind of limbic system condition, where our brain, which is the limbic system, we have a limbic system emotional part of our brain. It takes in the danger, it takes in the even safety when it wants to. So all of these conditions really fell under that kind of umbrella, under that kind of theme. And I really felt like, seeing how well I reacted and how others are reacting to that kind of, treatment, or that kind of therapy. I really wanted to help others understand that there is hope, that there is a way out of these kind of conditions, and it is not always what Western doctors are telling us. So unfortunately, this hasn't become a really big, this opportunity, this therapy, brain rewiring, regulating a nervous system, hasn't become very, very big in Israel. But it is quite well known in the US and in Europe and other parts of the world. And it is an amazing way to heal from within, to go into the root cause of the issue, of the condition, which is usually trauma. So it's it's amazing to discover that there's hope, and it's amazing to know that there is a way to help your body heal from these conditions, because I think most people who are in the midst of these kind of conditions, and we do have quite a number of people, not just in Israel, but all over the world, that are suffering from all sorts of different kind of conditions, whether it's Crohn's disease, autoimmune, fibromyalgia, CFS. These people don't find a lot of hope in traditional, physical therapies, or even bodywork therapies. So unless the nervous system is regulated, unless our brain starts to reincorporate safety, we're not going to find that kind of healing. We may find healing on some level, but it may catch on with us later on. So what we do when we do this kind of work is that we really dive into the body, we dive into the emotions, we dive into the trauma that is at the root of these conditions. And it is incredible. It's transformational. It's a lot. It's work, but it's not as complicated as it looks, and it is incredibly, incredibly satisfying.
It sounds it, definitely. Wow. So how many sessions on average would a person need with you? How does one approach it? How does one get started? Because you do this also via in person as well as via Zoom, right?
So yes, I do this one-on-one. I know that many people who prefer to meet one-on-one, or people usually who don't have enough self-discipline to. So I'll back up a little bit. It's I do have a brain retraining program out there. It's a home-based online program that people can do from the comfort of their own home, which maybe what happens is that it takes them through the theoretical part of the material, the theory, what happens in the brain, what happens in the nervous system, which is an incredibly important part of our brain understanding what is going on. So that theory is incredibly important. And the second part is the practical tools. It's having to reconnect with the body with safety, understanding what's there underneath the surface, acknowledging, validating emotions, having to be there on a very real level with yourself, and ultimately, finding your true self-expression. So regarding sessions, it really depends on the person and how well they reconnect, or how well they basically find safety, which is very much dependent on a person's nervous system. And I find it's really a very hard question to answer. So I see people usually find a lot of relief and a lot of healing within 3 months. And some people can take 6 months to a year, sometimes even longer if they find that they have a lot of resistance, a lot of certain kind of physical or emotional resistance to change, to safety, which can happen. And so I don't really like to tell people how much how long it can take, but I know that within a couple of sessions, people see quite a lot of emotional relief, a lot of less emotional reactivity to certain events in life. We become less emotional reactive to what happens, to stressors. We become more resilient. That's part of it. Physically resilient as well. We start to become, our heart starts to stabilize more. We don't react to stress as much. And so yeah, so this is I have a course. This course it's called Embodied, and I called it Embodied because it's really all to do with the body. It's a bottom up approach. So it also works from top down. Top down being it comes, we use our thoughts, we use our cognitive brain to look at the situation and to bring safety and to use our imagination. But it also listens to what the body needs, okay, to our stored emotions that live in the body, to all the accumulated stress that lives in the body, and we allow both of them to come together in a certain kind of harmonious agreement. And so there could be healing, so we hit all corners.
Wow. Okay. So how does this differ from Sarno, which is more well known in in Host Lesley, but also in Israel?
So I'm actually a studier of Sarno, and I incorporate his tools within my with my approach. I'm also a pain reprocessing therapy coach. So if anybody knows PRT, it's very much along the lines of Sarno, but it's more Alan Gordon. Whoever read that book, The Way Out, it's an incredible book. It's helping people out of chronic pain using neuroplastic methods to create safety where pain exists, where danger exists. And what's different is that I don't really find a difference, is that John Sarno mainly focuses on stuck emotions in the body being the source, okay, which is very, very much connected to what I do. I bring it in from all different sorts of sides, where I take in what John Sarno does, and I also bring in a little bit more of an embodied approach, where I invite people to tune into what's going on in the body. So it's not exactly meditation, but it's something called interoception, where we focus, okay, with our thoughts, but you also focus as in you tune into the sensations, the emotions, the feelings, the memories, anything that might be arising, which we call in the field the felt sense. We tune into that body to allow it to tell us the story, tell us the trauma, tell us where the emotions are living, where the feelings are stuck. And that allows us to really listen, to validate, to acknowledge, not to change, but to listen and tune in so there can be a release, a shift from within the body. So John Sarno allows us to become more inquisitive, to inquire what are the emotions that we may be suppressing into the body. What are the emotions that are maybe stuck from this kind of event when we were a child that we were not able to process because we never had the resources, we never had the support to process. So we push them down in the body. So he invites us to basically, just inquire, did I have anger stuck? Where is it living? Okay. But I find that there is a missing ingredient, and that missing ingredient is a system of going into the body to allowing a more somatic approach to be there, to go into what it is that we're feeling and to allow that listening to open up into release.
Wow, really interesting. Tell us, the last 2 years, as we all know, we've had the stress of the ongoing war. How's it affected your work, your clients? How's it affected you in using the modalities that you use? Any kind of tips that you can give us from afar, how to deal with this ongoing stressful situation?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because as when we started this war, I was very much witnessing from my point of view what was happening was that it felt like the whole country was going into fight or flight. And if I know that many people are familiar with fight or flight, but it's a state of stress in the body where at first it's a certain kind of reaction, a very natural reaction to what we're experiencing. It's adaptive. We step out and we want to fight, we want to mobilize in order to, you know, um, sort of complete the stress cycle. We want to be able to find resolution for what was causing us stress. But what happens here, because the war has been ongoing, because we haven't found resolution, and because the stress is ongoing, it's causing an ongoing chronic stress cycle in the body. So I've been witnessing so many people in fight or flight mode, and it's what's happening is that I'm getting a lot of clients sort of finding that they're, the repercussions, the circumstances that are leading to certain kind of anxiety conditions and all sorts of physical conditions as well from this stress, from this accumulated stress that's been going on for a couple of years. So yes, it's I've also heard a lot of people say, I've just gotten used to the stress. I'm okay now. At first I was stressed, but now I've gotten used to it. And it's okay. I'm back, I'm functioning, I'm back at work, I'm with my kids. But what's happening on a deeper level is what happened to me as well. We have a certain kind of adaptation. Our systems become so dysregulated that it's become the new norm. Okay, so we, of course, are at that point where we're out there, functioning, being with our kids, being out in the world, traveling. Maybe we're, in Israel dealing with a war. Maybe we're feeling that anxiety once in a while, but it's living within the body. And so what I've been doing with clients, since the war and, especially since the war is that we're dealing with that kind of, we're working with the body and to regulate and to help the body feel safe so it can find that resilience within that context of war where we're living in, that context of stress, that context of that fight or flight state that we're constantly chronically living in. So yeah, it's an incredibly important it's an important point to make that many of us are living in chronic stress and we don't recognize it because at that point it's already gone deep within. So yeah, that's
right. You're quite right. We're continuing with our daily activities, but our bodies are feeling it and expressing it in different ways.
exactly. It's so, I think it's completely underplayed, and it's a lot of people are just, they're not sure how to help themselves. They are stuck in their fight or flight state, which is a completely natural reaction. It's very, very normal. But what happens is that at some point it just accumulates to all sorts of different kind of like physical conditions and emotional conditions. It can really fester, and I'm here to basically help people become more resilient. So, and I just wanted to mention one thing, because I saw somebody pop into the chat about somatic experiencing. Yes, I do incorporate a lot of somatic experiencing within the work. It's a certain somatic therapy approach that helps you tune into the body sensations so you can release trauma. So yes.
Right, definitely. In fact, I can think of many people that you can connect with, that you could have literally mutually and good collaboration. So I'll mention that at certain names to you afterwards. Tell us how people can reach you, Noa. What's the best way to reach you?
So I'm available on social media. I have a page on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I have a Facebook group called Embodied Resilience. Embodied is the name of the program. I can also be found on my personal website, which is www.noakarywellness.com. And if you would like a direct link also to my special program, which helps people regulate their nervous system and rewire their brain, so it's for anxiety and physical conditions, it's www.embodiedprogram.com, which I hope Lesley will put on the chat, or I will put on the link to this podcast. And of course, they can also DM me privately if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to answer. I also provide a free discovery call. So, just a 30-minute call where people can talk to me about their issues, tell me if this is right for them. We can discuss any questions they may have. And yeah, that's about it.
Fabulous. Sounds wonderful. So please share me with the show notes, send it to me afterwards, and I'll add it to the different notes. Wow, no, that was super, super interesting. Thank you so much for being an awesome guest on our Monday Motivation Spotlight. So many of these things we don't always understand, the mind-body connection. And I know that there's different people dealing with different things, but each one comes with their own approach and with their own way. So thank you. That was super interesting, and wishing you much hatzlacha. Thank you to all of you for joining the Monday Motivation Spotlight. I look forward to seeing you every single week. Join us live if you can, with camera on and off. You don't have to be afraid of the camera, or if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching. I'm Lesley Kaplan. Thanks again to our sponsors, to Egan & Cohen Insurance, as well as to Lali's Flower Boutique in Jerusalem. I'm Israel Chai, wishing our dear nation, which always seems to be going through some kind of challenge. Every single week there's another challenge, besides the ongoing challenge of almost 2 years of war, which is how we actually started this podcast, most of you know. So I'm Israel Chai, wishing our hostages safety and a return to safety, our soldiers and our nation strength and chizuk to keep going. Thank you again, Noa. Look forward to seeing you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Have a good day. Bye-bye.